Hey, it's Brooks from Brooks Cog Guitars. We're gonna do a little bit of side bending. Setting up for these some clone sides and some clone one sides. I'm gonna do the bass side first and then the treble side. These guys are really tight bends. They're really hard to bend the wood that tight to make these little curves. So what I do is laminate three pieces together. They're each 1/32 of an inch. They will press into this form, and the form will clamp together and hopefully close all the gaps up between them, and then they'll dry out. So what I've done is laid out my pieces. I've got book matched sides, 3 sets of them, picked out which is going to be my outside face, and I've lined up the butts, the middle pieces, and the interior pieces. So I've got one piece soaking. I'm just going to take one at a time here to get a feel for it, and also to just so I keep track of stuff. It can be really easy to lose track of what's going on here. So I've got my inside face already. You can see how flexible this stuff is just out of the, just because of the fact that it's a 1/32 of an inch thick already. So it doesn't take much to bend it at this. You can see it's going to fit in there pretty quickly. The temperature on the iron, you could hear the popping. That sounds good to me. So I'm going to leave a little bit hang over the butt. As you notice, when I line these up, I've got a little bit area for overlap. That's so I can cut my butt joint cleanly. Have a little bit of extra to work with there. So that's kind of where I'm visually lining up, just hanging over just a little bit. And I'm looking at my curves, seeing what it's going to take to get these things into place. So you can use these metal strips as backers if you want. You don't want too much heat on there because it'll burn the wood, but going enough that you hear that popping. The wood fiber's breaking down. So just going to slowly work that bend into it, see where it comes up. At some point you can go to the other form, makes it a little bit easier, back and forth. See what I'm looking for. So I'm already getting into the tight bend. Again, this is my most interior piece, so when I'm actually fitting to the mold, this is the face that I'm going to be pressing this against. There is a slight gap built into my jig in between the two sides to allow for the 3/32 side to happen. Now, to me, this looks like I've shifted things a little too far beyond. I got my center line here, so I can almost work right back to it and gain a little bit of length. I knew when I cut these sides that I was right at the length that I needed, so I'm going to shift that bend back just a little bit. And go ahead and get some of this started for the tight bend. So I'm just, see what I'm doing, just adding a little bit of water. See right there, it's really sharp, so I need to work that bend in a little more, or if I press it over there, it's just going to snap it. So I'm working off the tightest radius on this thing, and just kind of want to overbend it a little bit. It's going to spring back on me. And if you can make out, there's a couple mini, it's little mini curves in here that will get pressed into the thing. So you can see my end cut is there. I'm looking pretty good on this piece. So if we can form it into shape there and temporarily keep it in its form. Probably at some point going to take that back out, reheat it, get it lined up a little bit better. Go. Alright, so essentially it's just going to kind of hold it while I'm working on these other pieces. So I'm going to go back to my base side, and this is the second piece. It's going to be face in. Let's do this before we take that off. Your book matches there. I'm keeping this lined up. I'm deciding which direction I'm going to bend them. Doesn't take much water. These thin little laminates are just that, pretty thin. They soak up water quickly, and it doesn't take much to steam them. That's what you want to hear, that popping. So I'm running my iron about 6. It's too off a high. It's probably going to continue to get heated up, so I'll turn it down just a little bit. You can see how quick it's drying that wood out. Maybe just a little too fast. But it certainly is doing what it's supposed to. Bending. So I'll open the form up here in a minute, but I'm just trying to get some of the grunt work out of the way so I can leave that closed up as long as I can. Tried bending these sides at 3/32 and they're just they're too tight. Doesn't work for these. Works for all these round bottoms, but up at the horns it becomes too much. So I'd rather laminate these and just work with the strips carefully. And we've got some techniques designed to help glue them all together properly, so that we get a nice glue joints in between each laminate. A number of different ways I've seen. Some are a little more creative than others. There's definitely the option for vacuum bag this. It's a little tricky though. You have to get a kind of a custom shaped bag for doing it, and I don't have a vacuum pump, so something that's on the list down the road. So I'm just laying in my bends pretty casually. Kind of getting the road map here of where these bends happen. it stops steaming, you know there's no water on it. So get some water, continue your bend. Trying to keep this thing perpendicular. I'm not trying to get any skews or weird funkiness going on to it. I want it to be straight up and down. So I'm just kind of using my eye to measure that as we go. So this is getting where we need to pull the mold apart again. So we've got a soft start there. Now I can kind of lay this back out, see where I need to be with that. Come around here, maybe a little more in there. So now I'm using the inside part of the mold to lay out this next one. However, it's going to be slightly off this because it's actually, this is the middle laminate like we talked about, overbent there, so we just correct it a little bit. See how it fits nice. So like I was saying, this is going to be the middle laminate. So it's going to be 1/32 off of the line that I'm bending it to right now, but it'll be fine. It'll be flexible enough that it'll just slip right in there when I'm ready for it. And that's almost it. Get a little more for good luck. And then we'll press it into position on the mold. Now I'm referencing that it's in the middle because it's going to move, it's going to shift, and our lines are going to shift. So I want to make sure that when they do, that everything's going to be right where it needs to be. So I will take our inside and I'll take our middle and I'll line them up using that as my reference point. Make sure everything's going in the right direction. Kind of pinching right there and holding it back while I'm closing it. So you can see now I'm getting a pretty good bond. What I'm not getting is it's not seating. I'm not seating at the bottom of it. The bottom, if I do that, I'll have a nice flat edge. They won't be flailing up or down. So these are slightly oversized, so that I can still work some dimensions into them. It does get tricky working with multiple pieces. That's the only draw to this laminating system. It's got to be patient and you got to kind of be agile. So I'm going to use the top as my reference, hopefully. Get all these lined up here. There we go. So I'll be able to get that third one in there, and then once they're all lined up, I'll be able to clamp this thing shut. I've got all my holes pre-drilled. I know where my clamps need to go to get these pressures right. I kind of have them labeled out which clamps go where. So let's move on to our final, which is our outside. This is going to be the butt. This is going to be the top of the instrument, bottom of the instrument. So these are the things I'm referencing and keeping in mind when I'm laying this stuff out. You need to keep these in track so that my lines, my grains line up and it looks like a nice book match side set, which it is. Alright. I mean, this really isn't like side bending. I'm just using it is, but it's so thin that these veneers are really not the same experience as bending a full thickness side. I'm not going to say it's cheating because it's an extra step for laminating. Most laminate forms are used in such a way that you don't really even have to do this step. You just can press them into the form, thin piece of wood, thin veneer, side strip, and you can make them fit. Something like 335 there. You have a lot more ability to bend that wood right into the form without wetting it and heating it. Let's see where I'm not bent enough. Now, some of these grains get uneven. This is Claro walnut, black Claro, black walnut, I don't know, Claro, if it's Claro or not. Anyway, you can see it's got some figure in it. So on the thicker pieces, that figuring is gonna telegraph as cracks. With this thin stuff, it telegraphs as flat spots, spots that don't bend smoothly with the rest of the side because they got a different density. So you can see I'm just trying to round everything out. It's my face piece, so I'm being a little more cautious with it. And at some point I'm going to have to pull this thing out of the mold and use one of the sides for reference. A little overbent and a little underbent. Minor corrections. Alright, let's go ahead and pull this thing apart and get our last side. Again, I'm really being aware, cautious of which layers these are. I don't want to get them mixed up. I'll keep them nice and organized. So I've got my inside, my middle, and I'm working on my outside face now. Again, I'm going to use the inside of the mold just because it's easier to check where these are versus trying to stuff it in here without without this being bent. So it's easier to check on the inside of the mold in these particular circumstances. Again, it's going to shift this way, so that line needs to just accommodate that shift just enough. The length does, alright? Keeping everything in mind here. All possibilities need to be accounted for.